The work that I do is full of questions rather than answers most of the time. Then the first P, proposition, I'm going to be proposing a number of things. And then the second P, provocation, I'm going to be provoking you and us and ourselves. And then the I is invitation. I'm going to be making an invitation for all of us to test this approach. So I am the pioneer and founder of a new field of studies called Apartheid Studies. I have slides. I'm wondering, Priyanka will help. All right. So just as there is Holocaust studies, for instance, are asked in South Africa, why is it there is actually no field of studies called Apartheid Studies? There are no courses, no modules, no centers, no institutes, no conferences, no journals on Apartheid Studies in South Africa or anywhere in the world. Even in the UK, which was a center of anti-apartheid work, in the US and Western Europe, you don't have apartheid studies, you don't have students reading and studying about it. People are doing important work on apartheid, but in silos, whether it's psychology or history or urban studies. There's no framework that links all this important work that is happening. So my work tries to create a framework that links all these silos so that the work is generative. So the approach that I spoke about, do we have any smokers in the room? Anyone? Yes, thank you. Do you have a packet of cigarettes? Anyone? Anyone with a packet of cigarettes? But it's fine if they aren't. Oh, thank you. Can I have a look? Thank you. Sure. Thank you.
I don't smoke here.
No problem. Thank you so much. Right. So it's in Japanese. Right.
Should I translate?
So the phrase I was looking for is one that says to the smoker, don't smoke, or tobacco is harmful. Right. It says to you, this thing is harmful. And yet you smoke anyway, right? And yet you use your own money to pay for the harmful product. And yet you can queue behind other people for the very thing. There was a time, I think in the 80s and 90s, when they would even put pictures of diseased lungs to try to scare people. And people would still smoke with those pictures right there. So I'd like to invite us. So and I'm already doing the questions, the provocation, the proposition, and the invitation. I'd like to invite us to think about things that you hate, but that you do anyway. Not just do anyway, but repeatedly. That you do again and again and again. Are there any of us here who are in a dead-end job? You know, you swear every morning that I'm going to leave. Right? And yet, every morning, you are in the shower, you are in your car, you are back in that job. 30 years later, some even up to retirement. I hate this job, it's dehumanizing, and you retire in that job. Are there other people in this room, and this may be a little bit somber, who are in abusive relationships? I'm not going to ask you to say I am, but to just reflect on that. Why do you stay? How do you stay? Even more importantly, how do you stay? Not why, how, the mechanics of staying. So my work is a reflection on how we live in harm's way. Not because we are addicted to oppression, not because there's a Stockholm syndrome, not because we are mentally colonized. We see what is going on. Like Ruba's talk here, we see what is going on. But we can't leave. We can't get out. And I'd like to understand the mechanics of living in harm's way. And by working Apartheid Studies, it sensitized me to this. It has sensitized me to this because I started my work on 17 August 2012. And if I ask people what happened on 17 August 2012 in South Africa, the answer is nothing. On 16 August 2012 was the Marikana massacre when 37 miners were gunned to death in front of television cameras. So I expected the next day, the 17th, the world to stop so that we can have an urgent conversation that you can't do this to human beings. But when I woke up on the 17th, the sun rose in the east and set in the west. Bird song in the trees. I had my cereal. Public transport was running like normal. That is when it hit me in the gut that, so is this how people live with apartheid? Is this how people lived with apartheid? Actually, life goes on. But how? How does life go on? And then I found out that there is something that happens with how human beings live in harm's way through schedules. Right? You create schedules. I understood that, in fact, the perspective from Apartheid Studies is about what I call substantive persistence. We like to talk about racism as legacies, so legacies of slavery. We talk about legacies of colonialism, residual effects. And my argument is they are not residual, they are not legacies. They are substantively remanent. They are there in substance. So we diminish our own subject of study when they call them effects and legacies, because they are not just legacies and effects, they are substantively persistent. So my work looks at the substantive persistence of harm, for example, because I started to understand after the Marikana massacre that there's something going on with how people live with harm, right? Racism has been around for hundreds of years. Slavery was around for hundreds of years. Colonialism. How do people live like that? How can you live with colonialism for 300 years? How is it possible? It's only possible because, number one, these are systems, these are systemic. But also, if you look in the context of racism and anti-racism, anti-racism itself is inherently uneven. My argument is that there's an unevenness in anti-racism itself where we take turns to be anti-racist. It's like we are in a queue, we are waiting to buy bread or tobacco or sweets, and you take turns at it. But because our action, our anti-racist action always happens alongside other things. Whether it's a dinner, whether it's picking up the kids and dropping off at school, whether it's paying bills, but each of us encounters the same objective racism at different rates. In my work, I call it the rate of oppression. So I want to talk about this relational side-by-sideness that I draw from apartheid by studying apartheid. What I call the compatibilities and contiguities of oppression. The genocide in Gaza is happening. How many of us stopped eating, lost their appetite? Right? We still eat, we still have our appetites. Maybe we lost them for a few days. But after a while, given time, you have your dinners as you always had. How many of us here then stopped going to the hair salon to get manicures and pedicures because children are being blown to bits in Gaza? How many couldn't sleep? Right. How many who usually snore, I stopped snoring, I can't sleep anymore? No, you sleep soundly at night. There was the Cricket World Cup. There was the Rugby World Cup. Currently in America, there's the FIFA World Cup, Club World Cup, graduations, shopping. We go to the barber, we go to the saloon. The side-by-sideness. There is a side-by-sideness. These things are compatible with each other. We care, we have solidarity, but at the same time, these things can go on side by side. So my work in Apartheid Studies started with this picture. This is 1960 in Johannesburg. These are Africans who are queuing to get the hated passbook. They hate it, but they are here. They are there at the pass office in Johannesburg, queuing to get it. You hate it. In fact, they had burnt their passbooks before, few months before, as part of the Defiance campaign. They had handed them back to the system. And a few months later, quietly, they are queued at the pass office to procure the passbook. What is going on here? So would you queue towards harm? Would you stand in line in the direction of the very things that you hate? Would you do it? I'm leaving a question with you. I'm leaving a provocation with you. I'm leaving a proposition with you. I have 1 minute left, and I would like to leave that. This is my last slide because I only have 5 slides. This is my last slides. You don't have to read this. This is just a note to the work that I'm doing in Apartheid Studies, which is an emerging field of study that for me tries to ask if oppressors are not always present everywhere, if racists are not always present everywhere in a physical sense, how is it that racism is perpetually present? Because it is perpetually present. Then I noticed that life goes on in harm's way, and my question was, how? And a key idea of Apartheid Studies is that oppression persists substantively, not as lingering effects. How does it do so? It does so because how the oppressed experience the very same objective, racism, the very same objective, oppression, is always uneven. No two people in the world experience oppression at the same rate. There is always an arbitrage. There are breaks in oppression that inform how far each of us goes to act against, let's say, racism. We all act against racism at a certain point, in a certain way, to a certain extent. I saw this in all the protests, whether Black Lives Matter, whether fees must fall in Johannesburg. How far will you go to act against racism? It's always graduated according to your specific rate of oppression. Should we do this? Should we ban libraries? Should we march? How must we act? How far must we act against racism? So my argument is that the rate of oppression is the idea that each oppressed person will experience a constantly shifting delay in acting against oppression. Whether it's because you want to go to the hair salon or to pick up your kids, or you have church camp, or you've got a rugby match, or there's a Liverpool game, or whatever it is. Because living in harm's way means we in fact are queuing towards the very thing we want to end. How is that? Is because we abuse the very costs of oppression, right? The oppressed, if you look at the Palestinians, they are the ones who are funding the bill of the genocide. That is how the genocide persists. The Israelis invoice the very cost. It's the Palestinians who are saddled with having to justify that they are human, who have to live with this. Meanwhile, football goes on, cricket goes on, rugby goes on. The Palestinians are alone. In an anti-racist world, the costs of oppression are again invoiced on the oppressed themselves. That is how colonialism persists. That is how slavery persists. That is how racism persists. Because of the unevenness in how far we are willing to go to act against oppression. This is a provocation. These are not answers. These are questions. These are propositions. These are provocations. These are invitations. Thank you very much.